First from the Fox News deck this afternoon, President Trump, in this hour yesterday, equated the actions of neo-Nazis and white supremacists at a white power rally with the people protesting them. And today he's facing backlash from business leaders and members of his own party. The president announcing hours ago he is dissolving 2 White House business councils as top CEOs cut ties with the president. President Trump tweeting this afternoon, rather than putting pressure on the business people and of the Manufacturing Council and Strategy and Policy Forum, I am ending both. Thank you all. Of course, just yesterday, the president tweeted, for every CEO that drops out of the Manufacturing Council, I have many to take their place. Grandstanders should not have gone on. Jobs. This is a total of at least 9 executives announced they were resigning from White House councils. More on that in a moment. But first, during an impromptu news conference in the lobby of Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan yesterday, the president once again blamed violence on both sides after demonstrations turned deadly at a white supremacist rally last Saturday. President Trump condemned hatred, bigotry, and violence from the alt-right, as he put it, but he also said some of the demonstrators marching with the neo-Nazis and white supremacists were fine people.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
So far, we've been unable to find the very fine people protesting with the white supremacists. The demonstrators profess to believe they are morally superior to blacks and Jews and gays and others. They chant neo-Nazi slogans, carry the symbols of Nazi groups, and demand separation from those they consider inferior. Watch their actions and hear their hate in this video from HBO's Vice News. Jews will not replace us. White supremacist groups organized a Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia last weekend over city officials' decision to remove the statue of the Confederate general and slave advocate Robert E. Lee and to protest what organizers call an anti-white climate in America. During those protests on Saturday, police say James Fields Jr. drove his car through a crowd of counter-demonstrators, killing Heather Heyer and injuring nearly 20 others. President Trump said Fields was a disgrace to himself, his family, and his country. And the president called the victim, Heather Heyer, an incredible young woman. President Trump then expressed support for those wanting to keep the Confederate monument of General Lee, comparing him to George Washington, who owned slaves.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Several prominent Republican lawmakers have come out against the president's remarks. Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, a Republican, released a statement that reads in part, President Trump took a step backward by again suggesting there is moral equivalency between the white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and KKK members who attended the Charlottesville rally and people like Ms. Heyer. I, along with many others, do not endorse this moral equivalency. Former Presidents George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, Presidents 41 and 43, released a joint statement. America must always reject racial bigotry, anti-Semitism, and hatred for all forms. This, as Fox News obtained a memo from the White House yesterday that the administration gave to the president's allies, instructing them to defend President Trump's remarks and blasting the media. The first talking point reads, the president was entirely correct. Both sides of the violence in Charlottesville acted inappropriately and bear some responsibility. Another one reads, the president condemned with no ambiguity the hate groups fueled by bigotry and racism over the weekend and did so by name yesterday, but for the media, that will never be enough. That's not how the hate groups saw it. One of their leaders, the former congressman from Louisiana, the former grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, thanked our president. When reading the teleprompter on Monday, our president denounced the group. When speaking unscripted, President Trump said both sides are to blame for the violence in Charlottesville. The race-baiting, anti-black, anti-Jew, anti-gay, neo-Nazi white supremacists and those who were there to demonstrate against them. Blame for both sides. An American president has done nothing like that in generations, and today the pressure is on from all segments of our society. The Washington Post editorial board wrote today, President Trump must go. David Lee Miller live at Trump Tower in New York City. David Lee?
Shepard, as you so rightly point out, the White House Talking Points memo is very critical of the media. The talking points say that the media reacted with, and I quote, hysteria at the very thought that some of the counter-protesters were armed with clubs and were spoiling for a fight. Meanwhile, the Vice President, Mike Pence, is now on a tour of Latin America. He addressed recent events in Charlottesville while in Santiago, Chile. The Vice President echoed the sentiments of Mr. Trump.
What happened in Charlottesville was a tragedy. And the President has been clear on this tragedy, and so have I. I spoke at length about this heartbreaking situation on Sunday night in Colombia. And I stand with the President.
In another development, mass resignations led the president to disband both his Strategic and Policy Forum as well as the Manufacturing Advisory Council. On Monday, the CEO of Merck Pharmaceuticals, Kenneth Frazier, the only African American on the council, called it quits over the president's remarks in Charlottesville. That's when executives started running for the exits, 9 in total, from some of the biggest corporations in America, including Intel, 3M, and Tesla. This afternoon, Mr. Trump, who had earlier said those who left were grandstanders who could be replaced and did not take their job seriously, decided to end those 2 advisory councils. And then, a short time ago, Shepard, after the announcement that the councils were over, there was a 10th defection, this one coming from the CEO of United Technologies. The CEO sent out a tweet. It said, in part, quoting now, "It is clear we need to collectively stand together and denounce the politics of hate, intolerance, and racism." That from Greg Hayes. And before Charlottesville, the CEOs of Disney as well as Uber also tried to distance themselves from this administration, Shepard. They stepped down from another advisory panel because of the policies of this president regarding immigration and climate change. Shepard?
David Lee Miller live at Trump Tower in New York City. Thank you. Let's turn to Philip Bump now, political reporter with the Washington Post, who's live with us on set. Philip, hello.
Hello.
Reaction from White House insiders.
So, as always, we have a lot of rumors about what people are saying inside the White House itself. We're hearing that the staff was taken aback. They were surprised by the fact that Donald Trump came out and had this press conference yesterday and made the comments that he made. We've heard that Gary Cohn, who's a senior administration official, was very frustrated, and the word that was used was disgusted by what Donald Trump had to say. You know, I think one of the things that's remarkable about this moment is there aren't people out there defending President Trump beyond the white nationalists and the racists that were part of this rally. We're not really hearing people that are actually standing in support of him, including from within the White House.
Our booking team, and they're good, reached out to Republicans of all stripes across the country today. Let's be honest, Republicans often don't really mind coming on Fox News Channel. We couldn't get anyone to come and defend him here because we thought, in balance, someone should do that. We worked very hard at it throughout the day, and we were unsuccessful. And of those who are condemning the president's condemnable actions, I've not heard any prominent leaders, former presidents, members of the House or the Senate, use his name while speaking in generalities.
I will say that Lindsey Graham, the statement from Lindsey Graham, I believe actually did refer to Trump specifically. But yes, you're correct. That there is Paul Ryan, for example, Speaker of the House, issued a statement that addressed it obliquely. The former presidents Bush did the same thing. They referred to generally these statements about hate. A lot of people are loath to actually address Trump directly. And I think part of that is because the issue at stake here is whether or not racism and hate should be part of the political conversation. And it seems to me that what people are focusing on is making that distinction. No, these are not valid political ideas that should be part of this conversation. And that being the priority particularly for members of Donald Trump's own party, I think makes some level of sense.
There are many voices from both the left and the right. It seems to be largely nonpartisan today, right, that giving these voices a platform that allows them to thank the President of the United States sets back race relations and could cause problems in our society. Some that we've already seen. From your reporting and that of the Washington Post, is the president understanding this?
I think pretty clearly not. I mean, what we're talking about here are inherently terroristic organizations. These are organizations that want to get rid of non-white people, that want to get rid of non-straight, non-Christian people from the United States. They want to instill fear. That is what they do. That's why they march at night with torches. That's why they evoke the symbolism of Nazi Germany. It is very, very clear that that is not something that is part and parcel with anything in American politics. Donald Trump on Saturday came out and said, those people that are doing those inherently terroristic things are the equivalent of the people who are protesting them. He was later cajoled into giving this statement saying, of course the KKK is bad, of course neo-Nazis are bad. But then, in front of that microphone, he revealed again that he agreed with what he'd said on Saturday, that these things are somehow equivalent. And that in and of itself is completely abnormal for an American president and in American politics.
We know that right-thinking Americans, as a former colleague would put it, agree with him on that matter. There is no debate in the United States society, in the American society, about whether there's a place for neo-Nazis. There is no debate. There never has been a debate. There was not a debate on Saturday. Right. There was not a debate on Monday. There is not a debate today. And that the president can't more forcefully express this, he certainly condemned them, but then made this false moral equivalency. Right. Is anyone in the White House, for instance, I believe we have a picture of General Kelly yesterday, the chief of staff, who, as the president, was ad-libbing. He was not scheduled to have this news conference. He was not scheduled. This is not the one. I'm talking about from yesterday in Trump Tower. That the picture that is. Okay. Well, I don't see the monitor. There we go. Well, that's not the one I'm talking about. You know the picture.
Sure, yeah. With
his head down.
Right.
From a number of different sources, I heard from people within the White House, here it is, with his head down. Is there anyone going to the president? For instance, is General Kelly going to the president and saying, Mr. President, you have to come and set this straight. You have to be forceful about this. You must lead in the way former presidents did, Bush and Reagan and Bush 43, Bush 41, Obama and Clinton, all of them. You must come forward. Is anybody in his ear in that way?
I feel very confident that there are people in his ear in that way. But the problem since June 16th, 2015, when he came down that escalator and announced his candidacy for the presidency, the problem has always been that Donald Trump does what he wants to do. And what happened on November 8th when he won the presidential election, despite everyone saying, A, you're not going to win, and B, you're doing the wrong things to win, when he won anyway, I think he saw that as validation, that his own gut instinct was the way to go. His gut instinct here says to issue statements that create that equivalence that you were just speaking about, that defend to some extent a group which, we can be very frank, supported his candidacy when he was running for president. So I don't know that anyone could be in Donald Trump's ear, including his family, and say things that would convince him to take a position other than the one he's already taken.
They are indefensible. There is no equivalence, and everyone in this country knows it.
Almost.
Almost.